This is Jim.callis. This module is on listening to learn. Starting off with a great quote by Dalai Lama. When you talk, you're only repeating what you already know, but when you listen, you may learn something new. So, being able to communicate is the most important leadership skill, and listening is a very important part of communication. So there are two types of listening: academic or unidirectional, and bidirectional. So academic listening, a good example of that might be in college when you're in a lecture and the professor is providing you information that you take down. Really, it is kind of a form of bidirectional because you do take exams and that provides feedback to the professor that you understood and developed the information provided. However, there are many unidirectional communication where feedback is usually not utilized. In bidirectional listening, the sender shares a message and the listener understands and comprehends it and then confirms or readdresses what was said so that the speaker understands that what they said was understood. To understand the importance of listening, just imagine a conversation you're involved in where you were pretty sure the other person wasn't listening. And have you ever had a conversation where you were wondering if the message you were trying to share was getting across, or if it's even worthwhile to continue to speak? If you feel like you're talking to a brick wall, and this is usually something you want to avoid. Do you feel like people don't listen to you, or you thought they were, but perhaps misunderstood? Or perhaps you misunderstood? Or worse, you understood what they said, but you didn't fully appreciate the importance to them and yourself. Being able to hear and pay attention to details as a leader is very, very important. And sometimes all those details aren't in the words of what was spoken. So you got to ask yourself, do you know how to listen effectively? Because it's a very strong key to leadership skills as well as being a medical provider. One of my heroes is Lord Robert Baden-Powell of Gilwell. He's also the gentleman who started scouting internationally out of Britain. And he said this great quote that if you make listening and observation your occupation, you will gain much more than you can by talk. It's also important to keep track of yourself and your listening skills while you're listening to someone to make sure you're not thinking about your next response. You need to actually listen and understand what the speaker is saying. So someone made this cool little ear design, which looks like the graphic design of a heart by putting two ears together. I see like an old dude's face in there. It's kind of weird, freaks me out a little bit, but I appreciate the message that this is trying to provide. Because when you place them side by side, it does form the imagined form of a heart. And interestingly, the word ear is in the middle of the word heart, and so is the word art. Thus, the ear is the art of the heart, and to care is to listen. Listening is an art. The objectives of this presentation is to help you become aware of how you listen. Explore good listening as a communication skill. Practice the skills of active and empathetic listening. Examine the relationship between listening skills and the receiving and giving of feedback. First of all, let's see some examples of some poor listening. I'm sure all of us have been in these situations. So at the banana game, it's kind of like more of a circus than a baseball game.
Yeah, really? Maybe you should stay away from those. Or you should drink more beer when you go there and you won't notice at all.
So about a week ago, I went to Bananas game. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to one of those games?
Yeah. You need to drink some of the banana beer. That's the best beer that they have over there. I don't know if you've had it before, but...
I haven't.
Yeah, you dip your hot dogs.
Also, I went to this awesome restaurant the other night. It's called the Sandpiper. And we had like steak and wine with it. It was awesome. Have you ever been there?
No.
Well, so then the next night we went to this old restaurant called, what was it? First National Bar. And okay, so this last week I was on vacation. I went to the Grand Targhee. It was pretty good. We went mountain biking and...
Oh, I go mountain biking all the time. I love doing that. It's like my favorite hobby.
Really?
Yeah, it is. We do it all the time. I do it with my kids, with my hubby. You know, my parents grew up mountain biking.
Oh.
It's great.
It is great.
It is great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I need to go to the bathroom now. I'll be back.
I went to Idaho this last week. It was pretty fun. Went mountain biking in Targhee Mountains. And didn't crash or anything. Went up to over 8,000 feet. Didn't get lightheaded or anything. I thought I might have some problems with altitude sickness. You know? Had a great time. The next night we went out and just kind of partied. Went to one of my favorite restaurants called Sandpiper. I find it interesting that there are many skills that are taught to us in school. However, listening typically isn't one of them. We learn how to give speeches. We talk about communication. However, there's never a listening to learn section in those classes. We learn how to do papers and make long presentations, but listening is never a skill discussed. Apparently, we're just supposed to figure that out on our own without any kind of direction. And sometimes some of us don't learn how to do that very well. So we need to learn to listen to learn. We need to make ourselves aware of how we are listening, and then you can use it as an effective tool in leadership, in medications, and treating your patients. And more importantly, it helps you understand where you can help people if you're actually listening to what they're saying. I think that it's pretty obvious why listening is a skill of leadership. So it's something that we need to work on and actively focus on to become better at. Listening is a primary means for connecting with other people, and it provides the means to make decisions and solve problems. When we listen, it helps us connect with other people. Sharing ideas and experiences with one another creates a pull of familiarity among us. And more importantly, it establishes a relationship of trust. The wise words of Theodore Roosevelt is, "No one cares how much you know until they know how much you care." When you show care, it helps you connect with people. And the best way to connect with people and showing them that you care is to listen. Listening creates trust, understanding, and awareness of strengths and skills. And listening is a rather large building blocks of friendship and teamwork. We like to say that listening is the glue that holds a team together because it helps you make decisions and solve problems by effective listening and communicating. They say it is the window where ideas are able to flow and the doorway in which answers are solved. Stephen Covey, a very successful writer, he said, "First seek to understand and then be understood." So there are two parts of effective listening. There's active listening and empathetic listening. First, we'll discuss active listening. When you're actively listening, you reflect back on what the person is saying. You'll rephrase to them what you think you heard them say. You make no value judgments. You strive to hear the message, and you look for the main idea, thought, or idea. So reflecting back. If you're finding it particularly difficult to concentrate on what someone is saying, try repeating his words or her words mentally as she says them or he says them. This will reinforce the message and help you stay focused. Restating what you understand is a very important part of listening because it feeds back to the speaker that you understood what they were saying. Oftentimes, you may begin your feedback as, "What I understand you to be saying is," and then you summarize. This gives them an opportunity to feed back to you or correct if you had any misunderstandings. Try during active listening not to make value judgments. By reflecting, you're restating that the listener is not making value judgments. By stating, "I understand," gives no disagreement or agreement to the statement. One simply is making sure that they're hearing what the speaker has to say and that they're letting the speaker know their message is getting through. Interrupting is a waste of time. It frustrates the speaker and limits full understanding of the message. Allow the speaker to finish each point before asking questions, and don't interrupt with counter-arguments. The second part of active listening is empathetic listening. When you're an empathetic listener, you try to make sincere attempts to understand what they're saying. You pay attention to body language, tone of voice, emotional tense, and you try to imagine things from the speaker's point of view. Oftentimes, these cues will give you more information about what the speaker is saying than the actual content of their words. By empathetic listening, you want to be sincere and try to understand what they're saying. You can do this also by avoiding distractions. Ignore your phone, eliminate outside distractions, breathe, don't let preconceived judgments help you not hear what the person is saying. And if you need to, move to someplace quiet to focus. Reading body and voice language can often give you lots of information about the tone and aspect and feeling of the speaker. And here's an example of several different messages being sent by these people. Sometimes most people's body language is being sent without them reflecting that they're sending that message. But it helps you interpret what they're feeling by these different body positionings and voice inflections and how they're carrying on in their sometimes forced speech or quiet speech. I mean, all this gives you information on how to effectively listen. So take care to notice the speaker's body language, tone of voice, and emotional sense. All this information contributes to the message being shared and helps you become an empathetic listener. Empathetic listening imagines things from the speaker's point of view. So the old saying, "walk a mile in my shoes," will actually help you understand what the speaker is saying if you try to understand how they feel and understand their point of view. We're going to see some role plays of exercise in effective listening. And then I challenge you to pause this video and go try it out yourself.
So, how I met my wife was, and I asked her to dance, and she said no. I waited a few minutes, another song, asked her again, she said no. And then I thought, that's it, I'm not going to try again. But then this guy started hassling her, asking her to dance. And she said no. And I said to the guy, "Hey dude, she doesn't want to dance with you. Leave her alone." He left, and then he came back. He asked her again, and she said no, and he sat down. And I went over and I said, dude, leave her alone. We're going to have a fight. So the third time, I just said, look, there's going to be a big fight here if you don't leave this poor girl alone. She doesn't want to dance with me. She doesn't want to dance with you. Just let her go. Just stop it.
So what happened then?
Well, then about 15 minutes later, he came back, and then she came over and grabbed my arm, and we went out and danced.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you guys got married soon after that?
No. No.
Wow.
We dated for 13 years.
Dated for 13 years.
13 years.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Wow. And now today you've been married 26 years.
Yes.
So, but how many years were you actually all together? 18 plus 26?
39 years.
Wow.
Almost 40.
That's awesome.
And it's all owed to Mr. Mustache, the dude that was hassling her.
Awesome. Okay.
Let's learn how to monitor our listening level. How do you listen and how do you respond when you're hearing something you don't want to hear? Or if the speaker is angry? What about if you're tired or hangry? Are you able to listen effectively during these situations? And have you tried to monitor how you're listening during these situations? There are a lot of things that we can and cannot control in this life, and people outside of us are one thing that we cannot control. However, we can control how we respond to them. And if someone is angry or acting emotionally, perhaps trying to keep a cool mind and listen empathetically and monitoring how we're reacting to how they're speaking will help us hear more effectively. Key to effective listening is being aware of our current situation, energy level, and interest. If we are upset, it may affect how we listen. Being drowsy definitely affects my attention span, and it's something I'm always constantly aware of. When I was in the military, one thing I learned how to fight drowsiness and my ability to listen would be during a long and or boring speech or information that's just not interesting to me. I would learn to stand and go to the back room so that it's more likely I can pay attention if I'm standing rather than sitting in a chair, hot and uninterested in the subject. Also, if you're hot or cold, late for other appointments, got other things on your mind, you need to monitor these things and make sure that you're attempting to empathetically and actively listen. If one notices there are any of these sort of listening impediments, take a time out. Say, listen, I need some time to think or to settle down, or perhaps I feel like you're angry and we need to have you settle down, and then we can get back together and discuss these issues at that time. Okay, so what are some things you can do to help adjust to better grasp the message of the speaker? Focus on what's being said, call a timeout to put on a sweater if you need, or to go to a cooler area, grab a bite, take care of a distraction. If you have a screaming kid in the background, it's a little hard to focus on what someone is saying, so sometimes taking a timeout to eliminate that distraction will help. Let you or their emotions cool down. Then you can get back together under conditions more conducive to good listening. Can we control every listening situation? Probably not. Think of some situation in your life that made communication difficult. Was there opportunity for bi-direction communication? Is there some conditions you might have been able to change to improve the communication appropriately? Good listening skills are powerful tools for calming adversarial situations, as well as finding solutions to problems. Let's role play some exercises with adversarial listening.
Jim, you didn't sign the book again.
I'm sorry.
You never signed the book.
Well, I was busy.
You have to sign the book every day.
Oh, so you're saying that I never signed the book?
You never signed the book.
Oh. Okay, so what I'll try to do from now on is make sure I sign it after every patient. Would that make you happy?
That would be wonderful, thank you.
Okay, I'll do that right now.
What did you observe? How did the angry person react to the listener? How did the listener show the angry person that he was listening? Would you say that an angry person responded to how they were being listened to? Acknowledge but don't immediately judge their complaints. And if there is not enabling by the listener, complaints will seem smaller and ultimately more manageable. Also, taking a negative and flipping it to a positive, a listener can also structure a more productive framework for finding solutions. I hear what you don't want. Now tell me what you want, for example. A conversation cast in a more positive light naturally involves more empathy and support. In these cases, when you've flipped it from negative to positive, their body language will also become more open, and chances for resolution for the situation are greatly enhanced. Positivity Can Change Everything by Jesse Cole, owner of the Savannah Bananas. Listeners should always strive to create a positive present as opposed to a negative past. Let's talk about feedback for a minute. Feedback is a gift, and we need to make it a positive experience. If we don't receive feedback, we don't know how to correct ourselves, we don't know how to make ourselves better, we don't know what we're doing good or what we're doing really, really bad. So anytime we get feedback, we try to view it as a gift. However, you may have received some feedback in the past that was difficult to receive, and sometimes it takes making yourself humble to listen to this feedback and to try to make it constructive to your life. Using effective listening skills, a feedback situation may be turned into a positive experience. Have you ever had someone give you advice about something, and how did it feel to be receiving feedback? Have you ever been in a position to tell people how they can do something better, or how they might make a positive change in their behavior? How did it feel to be offering feedback? From time to time, all of us find ourselves giving and receiving feedback. It's a basic element of team development, leadership, and friendship. For feedback to be helpful, both parties must be using the skill of effective listening. When you're giving and receiving feedback, ask questions to build rapport, and use open-ended questions to fine-tune the details: who, what, when, where. Listen effectively to their message. Be aware of their message. Be aware of their body language. Be aware of your body language. When you're giving feedback, make sure that your feedback is helpful. And sometimes it's important to understand if the recipient is open to feedback. You should only deal with changeable behaviors. Make sure you deal with specifics and not generalities. Describe the behavior, not evaluate it. Describe the impact to you. Accept your responsibility, and check for understanding. When giving feedback, make sure you consider your motives. Your feedback should always be considered helpful. Otherwise, are you doing this feedback to boost your ego or to try to make yourself look important? Find out if other people involved are open to receiving feedback. Ask, are you open to feedback? Make sure when they respond, you read the voice tone and body language as well as what and how they say it. For example, yes from a sad sound and folded arms probably means no. Listen carefully, rephrase what they are saying, and be sure you understand them. Let's deal with behaviors that can be changed. What are some behaviors that cannot be changed? Perhaps personality disorders. Most behaviors can be changed, but some are more time sensitive than others.
And sometimes it requires quite a bit of goal making and character development in order to change some behavior. However, giving tips and feedback information will often help a person change themselves if they are interested in that feedback and use it to help develop themselves. Remember to deal with specifics and not generalities. For example, a generality might be, "Hey, your speech was great." Or more specific, "I really appreciate your examples of when you were speaking about the types of generalities." Generality might be, "I like the way you asked open-ended questions." Or specifically, "I like how you showed that by asking open-ended questions, you were able to express interest and empathy to a person's current situation." Generality, "I thought your ideas on emotion were great." Specific, "I really appreciate the discussion on how thought influences emotion, and that emotion and thought interact with and reflect in our behavior." When you're giving feedback, describe the behavior. Do not evaluate it. Avoid labels. Let the person know the impact the behavior has had on you. And use I statements to accept responsibility for your own perception and emotions. Make sure the recipient of feedback have understood your message in the way you've intended it. Ask them to rephrase what they heard you say. This tends to be more of what a leader might ask while giving feedback, not vice versa. Tips on giving feedback include: one can have caring feedback without good technique, but the slickest technique in the world will not hide a lack of caring. So what that's saying, in kind of a weird, jumbled mess way, is you can suck at feedback giving, but if you actually care, then it will matter. But if you're really good at technique with feedback, but you don't care, you might as well not even try it. Some tips on receiving feedback. Seek it out. Listen carefully to what is fed to you. Listen actively. Listen empathetically. By seeking out feedback, you will nearly always provide you with information that will help you. Listen carefully. Receiving feedback requires a heightened awareness of yourself and the person offering the feedback. Listen actively. Restate the feedback in your own words so that the speaker knows the message you are receiving is the same as the one the speaker intended to be sent. Ask clarifying questions. Listen emphatically. Put feedback in its proper context by observing the speaker's body language, tone of voice, and emotions. Consider the speaker's reason for offering the feedback. It's important to try not to become angry or defensive. Remember, you're not a bad person, and people still like and respect you. Try to retain perspective and context. And make sure you don't discount feedback based on the source. Consider feedback as a gift because it truly is. Summary in listening to learn. Effective listening is a skill that each of us can learn and consistently improve upon. Listening plays a vital role in forming relationships, develop teams, and with finding solutions. The best listening is both active and empathetic. Listening can be a tool in turning a negative situation into a positive one. Listening well is an important part of both giving and receiving feedback. Thank you for participating in this module, and I hope that you will give me some feedback on the presentation. Please practice and work on your listening skills and working on your feedback and receiving feedback. Thank you.